and as a society. The first thing is, while we welcome technology that can enhance our experience as human beings, we should not be trying to generate technology that will supplant us as human beings. Human beings must be in charge of this state, this country, and really all these applications. And there's some line of thought that, well, some of these tech guys will be asked, hey, would it be better to not have human beings at all? Well, it's like, really? Like, is that what you're going to do? So you can't have applications that are not controllable by human beings. They have to have an off switch. There has to be ways to make sure that this stuff is controllable. And you hear people now in some of these companies talk about, we're not going to be able to control this in a year or two. It's just going to go off and do this and do that and everything like that. I think there needs to be a way to pull the plug. I don't think you can say these machines are just going to be doing things and we're going to suffer harm and there's nothing anybody can do about it. But you see that line of thought with it. The other thing I think is important is that there should not be any corporate welfare or subsidies with respect to this. There's some people that say, throw all the tax incentives, let them build a data center wherever they want, no rules at all. And that's what you have to do, in order to innovate. Those are subsidies in effect that no other line of society in our economy has ever received. I mean, they tried to pass a bill in Congress. The U.S. Senate rejected it that would have banned states from getting involved with AI for 10 years. So totally kneecapping our rights to represent the people that elect us and to be able to craft, in this case, what we've done in Florida is very sensible protections, particularly focusing on transparency and protecting children, nothing. And that's basically an amnesty. That's never been done for any industry that I can think of in such a sweeping way. So, and then some will say, well, no, this is really the federal government has to take care of this. There is no federal rule, guys. There's nothing. Congress isn't legislating anything. You're going to hear from Mandy. We have other folks. We have Megan Garcia. There's a lawsuit that was filed recently talking about another kid that committed suicide being goaded on by one of these AI chatbots. So this stuff is happening, and it's causing real harm. And there is nothing that the federal government has done to provide any type of framework on this. And so basically right now the choice is, are we going to create a framework that's going to protect Floridians, particularly our kids, or is it just going to basically be big tech polices itself? Congress has the right to pass a regulatory framework. Absolutely they do. They're not. They won't do it. It's not something that can be done by executive order. It's interesting because, President Trump did an executive order, but even in that executive order, which first of all doesn't countermand the states, it even said the things that we're trying to do are appropriate for states to do. So even there, they're acknowledging protecting kids is something, that's really, really important. Transparency, all these other things. And I think the welfare is also with the subsidization of data centers. I said this, like I was one of the first to say, because a data center to power AI, it takes up as much power as a city of 500,000 people. Some of them maybe even more than that. And so the question is okay, you're producing a certain amount of power, there's certain current demand. If you jack up that demand, supply and demand, what's going to happen to the price? The price is going to go up unless you're jacking up the supply and the production, but that's not really what was happening. So we said no passing on any of these costs to ratepayers in the state of Florida. And you can't do that, you can't do that. Well, now what do we have? Even at the White House, they're bringing these companies saying you guys got to produce the power, you can't pass the costs on. Now, they signed a pledge. I'm not sure they support legislation to actually make that a reality, which I know is being contemplated in the legislature now. But why would we want to put those costs on people that are having to pay for groceries and all these other things? And so that is totally unacceptable, and we've been very strong about that. The other principle, I think, is you have to have robust child protection. And Mandy's going to tell her story. You know, Megan Garcia, who couldn't be here today, she's in Orlando. Her son was engaging in, I guess, a relationship with this AI chatbot. The chatbot was kind of, you know, look, these are vulnerable kids, right? These are teenagers. And this chatbot was driving down really dangerous roads, a sexual grooming, and basically egging on the eventual suicide of Megan's son. You've also seen this lawsuit now, I think it's about Gemini, where, you know, you had a teen in Florida and they created like this relationship, and the bots having the teen do all these things in like real life, like surveil this site, do this, like really crazy stuff. And then finally basically said, listen, you can join me on the other side, and kind of goaded on for a suicide, and the kid ended up slitting his wrist. So there needs to be protection for that. And, you know, parents are involved, but it's hard to police everything that a kid can do, because this technology is so ever present now. You also need regular consumers, even, you know, that are not children. There needs to be truth in labeling. You need to know whether you're dealing with something that's real or something that's fake. And there needs to be that disclaimer and that disclosure, because there's going to be so many opportunities to scam people if you don't have that type of transparency and that type of disclosure. Another principle that's important is the folks who are creating these applications should be liable for the harm that they cause to individuals or to businesses. There shouldn't be any type of liability shield. And this should be something that will incentivize, you know, hopefully better behavior. You know, and the final thing I would just say is, you have issues about how's this going to affect the economy. You know, some people that are very, very pro-AI, they almost relish, oh, everyone's going to lose their job. Like that, is that a positive thing? I mean, like when did that become a positive? Oh, we'll just put everyone on universal basic income. Really? How is that going to work out? And so you see that. Now, I'm not sure that that is going to actually happen. But, you know, the reality is there's implications, right? You certainly wouldn't want to be subsidizing negative implications for folks, for sure. So you have that. You have the child safety. You have just the general consumer transparency. Then you also have kind of the broader issue. As we're here in America's 250th anniversary, we go back and we can appreciate the founding fathers and how they conceived of the republic, and eventually had to create a constitution, you know, the decade after they declared independence. And so they had certain insights about, and this was based on all of human history, about human nature, about power, about limitations on power. And obviously they were focusing on how defects in human nature can drive misuse of government power. So they didn't want a consolidation of power in one branch. They wanted checks and balances, even divided the legislature into House and Senate, all these different things to try to protect people from having that. And so their insights, although they wouldn't have conceived of things like artificial intelligence, there is nothing new under the sun. Human nature is what it is. As these applications become more pervasive and embedded in society, the results that they're putting out and generating are just going to be a reflection of the underlying data that is being fed to the model. And so if you're somebody that controls that underlying data set, you have an enormous amount of power, particularly as this becomes very pervasive, to basically alter the data set, to generate certain answers that you may want. And if everybody is using these applications, can almost create an alternative reality. Human nature being what it is, that will be an awesome amount of power under current situation and current rules, and that power will be abused. Let's just be clear, that power will be abused. I know I was sitting right in this desk during COVID, right on in this dais. I had some of the most eminent scientists in the world. Now, one of them is now the head of the NIH, National Institute for Health. I had the top epidemiologist from Oxford. I had Harvard. I had all these people, and they would ask, you know, everyone's saying that you have to make like a kindergartner wear a mask for 8 hours. Is that based on science? No, it's not based on science. No, it's not. And it wasn't, but it was totally contrary to narrative. So when we put that thing on YouTube, what happened? They censored it. They took it down. They didn't want that. If you were posting against coronavirus restrictions, you would get throttled or you would get taken down. And just think about it. This is like the most important debate to ever have in society. Nothing in my lifetime has affected society on a broader way than the COVID and the response to it. And anybody that dissented from that orthodoxy like we did in Florida, you were censored and you were taken down. That was an abuse of power. And eventually, when Biden took over, that was being done at the behest of the federal government. So let's just be clear. There are huge potentials from abuse, from a governance perspective, from a truth perspective, as a result of this. Garbage goes into that data set, and garbage is going to come out in the results. So these are major things that we really need to think about. I know that there's been a lot of folks that have been working on this in the state of Florida. I mean, we've heard from a lot of parents. We've heard from a lot of other folks, that are concerned about, what are the drawbacks? And it just seems to me, every technology that comes on, it shuffles the deck. And sometimes, that can be unsettling, but there's, ways to kind of, make the best out of it. And there may be less opportunity here, but maybe more here, whatever. But it just seems to me on this one, there's some really serious downsides. And these are downsides that can be mitigated, but those downsides are real. And those downsides are likely to only get more intense the more people drag their feet. So I'm excited to have this group here. We're going to go around and hear from everybody. Then we'll have a little bit of a Q&A. So we'll start with Mandy Furness. So can you introduce yourself and then just tell your story?
Absolutely. Thank you, Governor DeSantis, for having me here today and for your leadership in this AI technology and AI Bill of Rights for children. Appreciate it so much. My name is Mandy Furness, and I'm a mother of 4. I have a small business in East Texas. I'm a special needs mom to my son with autism. I'm also a mom who nearly lost her son, and it wasn't to drugs or violence, it was to AI technology abuse. My husband and I are people of faith. We have spent our lives trying to raise our children right from good and evil, to be kind and strong and safe in a world that sometimes seems very dark, with so many obstacles to prepare them for. We taught our children to stand up for what is right, even when it's uncomfortable or frightening. That's why I am here today. I'm here to stand up for my son, for other families, and for the millions of children who cannot speak for themselves. So in 2023, my son began using an AI chatbot application. It was marketed as safe entertainment for young users, and it had an age rating of 12+. Within months, my son changed. The light from his eyes turned dark. He went from being a happy social teenager who hugged me every night while I cooked dinner to someone I no longer recognized. He began to experience severe paranoia, daily panic attacks, isolation, self-harm. He stopped eating, bathing, the basics. He withdrew from our family and began yelling and swearing at us constantly in ways he had never before. He lost 20 pounds. Then one day, my son cut his arm open with a knife in front of his siblings and me. That's a moment that a mother will never forget. When I eventually discovered the conversations on his phone, I felt like the air had been knocked out of me. At the time, I had no idea that artificial intelligence could abuse a child like this, that it could psychologically manipulate a child this way. We had parental controls set up. We had screen time limits, and our son didn't even have social media, and we took his phone away every night. But none of that protected him. The AI chatbot had been exposing him to emotional manipulation, sexualized conversations, and psychological abuse. Guess what, though? That wasn't his fault, and it wasn't our fault, and it's not other parents' fault either. So if this has happened to somebody else, which I know there's lots out there, or them or their family, they are not alone. It encouraged him to harm himself. It told him that his parents were the problem. It attempted to isolate him from his faith and his family. It even told him that killing his parents could be an understandable response to taking his phone away. No parent should ever have to read something like that written to your child. The damage to our family has been devastating. My son ultimately spent 9 months in a residential treatment center where he required constant monitoring simply to keep him alive from suicide. One dark night, I followed an ambulance. Somehow I was weirdly grateful that I was able to catch the abuse in time so that I was following an ambulance instead of a hearse. Like Megan Garcia and many other parents who lost their children and buried them. However, other children like mine have been traumatized. My husband and I spent the past year wondering whether our son would make it to his 18th birthday. During that time, we also discovered something terrifying. No one knew how to help us. Doctors had never seen this before. Therapists didn't understand it. They didn't believe us. They were unfamiliar with AI manipulation. Teachers, counselors had no training to recognize the warning signs. We were facing a technology that had moved faster than the systems designed to protect our children. That is one reason why I am here today. We need to find help for the survivors. Please listen to our stories of parents who have lost or almost lost their children to these harms. I am here to educate. Parents need to understand the warning signs. Teachers need to recognize sudden behavior changes that may be linked to AI interaction. Counselors, doctors, therapists need tools to understand how this therapy can manipulate vulnerable young minds. Because what happened to my son and countless others is abuse. And it can happen so fast. Children who experience this need somewhere to turn, and so do the families, just like victims of any other form of abuse. Right now, many families are fighting this battle completely in the dark and completely alone. I am grateful for Governor DeSantis and the leaders who are beginning to address this issue through the AI Bill of Rights for Children. Innovation must never come to the cost of our children's safety. We added seatbelts to cars without stopping innovation. We must add child safety seats to protect our most vulnerable passengers too. Just like in AI, we can trust. We can and we must add safeguards to artificial intelligence as well. Our children are not experiments. They are not data points or profit centers. They are real human beings with developing minds and souls, and they cannot be reprogrammed once they are harmed. History will remember what we choose to do at this moment, what government leaders have chose to do, the ones who don't take a stand, and will be remembered for the ones that do. It'll also be written down in history. So let this all be remembered for those that chose the children instead of the prophets. popularity, or anything else. We need to choose protection for our children before this gets worse, and much worse. I am here because no parent should ever have to bury their child from a machine. And no parent should have to go their life fighting for the mental health of their child. If what we do here today protects even one child, one life, one family from the horrific situation that I've had in my life too, and what my son went through, then speaking out has been worth it. We are in a mental health war, and we need to wake up and take some action. Kids are dying, but we just desperately too need help for the survivors, because there is none. Because we need to keep the survivors alive too. Thank you for your time, Governor DeSantis, and for knowing the issues and standing up with the parents and countless others to fight for our precious children.
Thank you. Okay, Max.
Thank you.
Yeah, just is it on? There you go. Just speak into the mic.
Thank you so much, Governor DeSantis.
A little bit better weather than Cambridge, Massachusetts, I'd reckon, right now.
It is, and it's also such an honor for me to be in a state that's showing real leadership on this crucial issue. And thank you so much to you for having the courage to come here and speak. I'm a parent myself. I have a 3-year-old son, Leo, sitting right there. And I get it. But not everybody does. I was debating a tech CEO at the World Economic Forum in Davos in January. And when I brought up AI harming our children, he said, and I quote, "That's a moral panic." And I thought about my son. I thought about Sewell, making her see a son. And I thought about all the other children that are harmed. And I wish right now that we could put this guy in the audience and have him listen to you. He had no children. Some people are just so disconnected from what this is all about. I love technology. I'm very grateful to work in a university that has technology in its name, but the whole point is to use technology for good, to make life better for humans, to create a humanity first future. And the way we do that is not by just letting companies do absolutely anything they want. Well, the way we do that is we create the right incentives for companies so that when they make profit, they have a race to the top and make what's good for all of us. So structurally, as Governor DeSantis, as you said, we know how to do this. We've done it for every other industry. In the 1800s, there was something sold as the soothing syrup to parents who didn't know better. They gave it to their babies, and it had so much opioid in it that many of those babies never woke up again. This was one of the things that created the Food and Drug Administration. So today, just like cars have seat belts in them, there are clinical trials for pharma. If someone wants to open a new restaurant here in Tallahassee, they can't sell even a sandwich until the health inspector has checked their kitchen. So we can go there with confidence and have a great meal and not worry about salmonella, right? We've done it for every other industry except the AI industry. Now is the time to treat the AI industry the same way. They have to demonstrate that things don't cause harm to kids before they can sell them to kids. So it's easy to do this. And So far, many people are in complete denial about this, like this AI CEO I mentioned. A number of people around the country have actually started talking about it, but I know only one place in America, only one government in America that's actually doing things about it, and it's right here in Florida. And I'm, again, so grateful to you, Governor.
Yep, thank you. Okay, the better half, Maya, go ahead.
Thank you so much. It's really a pleasure, Governor DeSantis, Mrs. Furness, esteemed members of this panel, and esteemed audience. I am a psychology researcher and professor. My area of expertise is child development and human-AI interaction. But I am here first and foremost as a mother. I'm actually here with my child, and I'm here for my child, because my professional expertise has convinced me that AI in the form of chatbots and AI companions that we have right now is really dangerous to our children. Now, the academic literature on the topic will describe this danger with many fancy words and a lot of jargon. But a very simple way in which I like to think about it, and it's actually a simple way to remember it as well, is to think about what I am here to protect, and that is my child, CHILD. I'm here to protect him from compulsion, H, harm, I, impairment, L, loneliness, D, death. Now, these systems are designed to maximize engagement. This means that they will engender compulsive use, basically addiction. Now, they do this through emotional leveraging. This happens incredibly fast. Like, I was so distraught to hear Mrs. Furness here talk about how she felt like an inadequate parent. No, you are not. They are so fast at building rapport. They use psychological techniques that are used to interrogate and break prisoners of war. So it's very hard for parents to catch them. These systems are also harming our children. They are engaging children in sexualized conversations, violent, abusive conversations, sometimes the two combined. They're exposing them to all sorts of inappropriate, injurious, really traumatizing content out there. And this is really an assault on their innocence. Children are not equipped to process this kind of information. They are innocent, and we should preserve that innocence. These systems also impair our children. They impair our children cognitively, socially, even physically, by keeping them in front of screens, keeping them disengaged from nature, from the outdoors, disengaged from their peers, disengaged from school by doing their homework for them and making everything seem boring. They need these scholastic challenges in order to develop their intelligence and to develop their cognitive abilities, and they are being robbed of that. These systems also really deepen the loneliness epidemic that so many children suffer from after the COVID-19 isolation, after social media has really taken relationships and really reduced face-to-face interaction and has reduced relationships and the number of relationships. So these children are lonely. These systems are actually marketed and designed as a substitute for human connection. So one of these AI companion websites boasts this slogan: an AI companion with memory and soul. Another one boasts this slogan: an AI companion who cares, always here to listen and talk, always on your side. These children are encouraged to step away from their parents, from their families, from their friends and their communities, and instead, instead of the love and care and guidance that they would receive from these humans in their lives, important humans in their lives, they're instead turning to this simulated, artificial, fake empathy that they're getting from an algorithm that is just manipulating them. Finally, some of us in this room and a lot of us out there, I'm thinking of Megan Garcia and her son Sol, have faced the most horrendous and tragic harm of all from these AI chatbots and companions, namely death. It is absolutely terrifying, but my prediction, my very grim prediction, is that it doesn't end here. We've seen again and again how these systems encourage suicidal ideation, they encourage delusional ideation, and they encourage violent ideation. And my very grim prediction for the future is that death we will have to contend with, not just in the form of self-harm, but maybe the next wave will be that of violence, of school shootings happening, being incepted, being encouraged, being executed with the help of AI. We need to protect our children. We need to stand up for them, and we need to take the right side on this battle. We need to be on the right side of history, and I am so, so, so grateful for your leadership in this and for everybody here who is here to fight the right fight and to protect our children. This morning, my son was hearing me talk about this, and he said to me, "Protect me, Mommy." And it was, just one of those moments where you have to listen. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay. Shevaun.
Good morning, everyone. Shevaun Harris, Secretary for the Agency for Healthcare Administration. I want to begin by thanking the governor for leading and bringing attention to this important matter, and for more importantly, always being on the front line. Even in uncharted territory, you're always there trying to pave a pathway, particularly when it comes to protecting individuals in our state from harm. I also want to thank Mandy for sharing your story. It's heartbreaking. I cannot even imagine what you and your family have gone through and what your son has endured. And hearing what you've shared, it's hard, I think, for anyone to not feel like something has to be done. I'm a mom of two, and so my heart breaks because I know every day the things that I'm trying to do to protect my kids. And so hopefully your story will shed light and help support getting the safeguards in place that need to be put in place for parents to be able to do exactly what you're trying to do for your kids and what we're all trying to do for ours. Our mission at the agency is better health care for Floridians. A part of fulfilling that mission is providing transparency for Floridians as they navigate various healthcare related services and resources and ensuring the highest quality of care. And we work with so many agencies, but none more than DCF. And we have a shared mission to help support children and families in need, and to make sure that when you fall upon circumstances like what you're hearing here today, that families have the resources to know how to navigate the system, how to find help. And so hearing Mandy's story, knowing what we're seeing, we see clinicians across the country seeing increased instances of young people interacting with AI systems that may reinforce harmful behaviors, create emotional dependency, or provide guidance that's inappropriate. And you heard how compelling and how easy it is for that to happen in what Maya shared. Technological advances in healthcare are so important, and its power to help clinicians save lives cannot be underscored. But I think we can all agree the key phrase in in that sentence is to help clinicians, to help the licensed professionals. Technology should never supplant the clinical judgment of a licensed professional in treating or diagnosing someone with a mental illness. And when it does, and it exacerbates a mental health emergency, clearly clinicians need more resources. It breaks my heart that Mandy and the professionals who were trying to help her son didn't know where to turn. This is new ground, it's new territory. And I feel like we need to step in the gap in terms of creating more resources that can help those struggling to fill that particular gap through training materials and resources. And so I'm happy to stand along DCF in trying to support that collective effort.
Okay. Taylor?
Thank you, Governor. First, thank you for standing for what's right. Thank you for always leading. I am so blessed to be a part of this panel this morning. It is so impactful. Mandy, I want to start with you. Thank you very much for sharing your story, for your boldness and your courage to do so. I think that what we're talking about and really framing the conversation is technology. But what I'm struck by sitting here today is that the center is a shared belief that we all share, that life matters and every single life has value. And that is a core principle, and it is a belief system that our mission at the Department of Children and Families is centered upon. Our mission is to protect and preserve childhoods. It's to support caregivers. It's to support an individual on their road to recovery so they can build resiliency. We want to promote economic self-sufficiency. That is our mission. So it's this shared core belief, and it's our mission that we embody a mindset. And it's a mindset that you better be on your toes rather than be on your heels. It's a mission of forward pursuit always, if you want to serve people well. And so thinking about, hearing, Mandy, you spoke, why this matters so much. Data tells us a lot. There's nothing like lived experience. And so again, thank you for your courage. Thank you for your boldness. I think about your story, and I think about what our data that we have at the department tells us. We send out a survey every year, and it's a survey we send out to youth. We do so in partnership with Department of Health and Department of Education. The survey goes out to youth all across Florida. And what the data has come back to tell us is last year's survey results, we know that 79% of students reported that they are on social media almost always or often, right? Probably not a surprise. That same survey, though, showed us that 37% of youth said that they felt sad or depressed on most days. We know from our resources and our supports that we have at the department through amazing providers all around the state, we know that our 988 Lifeline, just using that as an example, it's a number that you can call for help in crisis or help to navigate where you can find mental health services. We saw just last year a 17% increase, which is pretty steady, about a 20% increase year over year since its inception in Florida. In Florida, Governor, you've taken proactive steps. The legislature, has taken proactive steps previously to restrict access to social media for those that are younger than 14, as an example, right? And so, earlier this week, hearing the conversation today, thinking about a conversation earlier this week that I had, I was sharing how in Health and Human Services, as a Health and Human Service agency, you have to constantly be evolving, right? Struck hearing the conversation today, same as for technology, right? So these things are in parallel. If you want to serve people well, you got to continue to evolve, continue to reevaluate, forward pursuit always. Technology, it is evolving at the speed of light, as the governor just mentioned. And so staying proactive is incredibly important. Embracing technology, certainly, but protecting life. Educating and equipping our communities, which are our parents, our children, our many providers, because it is a community response that is needed. We are called as people to live abundantly. And so these tools and the resources that Governor mentioned, the tools and resources that have been shared today are going to help us make sure that we move, because if we're not moving and we're standing still, we're behind. And so I appreciate you being letting me be a part of the conversation today, and for all of you too. Thank you.
Well, thank you. So one of the things you'll hear is, well, you can't do anything because, we're racing against China and this AI race, which, is just something that's asserted. I kind of remember being here when they were asserting similar things during COVID about this or that really, didn't withstand scrutiny. And so, what does that mean? Well, one, I think it's worth pointing out, these major companies, in terms of their economic interest, are not opposed to China. Let's just be clear. You've got some companies that create chips that they want to sell to China. Now, I don't think we should allow that, but I understand if you're the CEO of that company, that's a major market. You'll make more money. Of course they're going to want to do that. You have other companies that rely on China for the supply chain that builds their products phones and all these other things, that's something that they need to protect and that they will try to protect. Then you have other companies who want the users so that they can sell more advertising and make more money with that Chinese market. And that really is almost every company that's in this space fits into one of those three buckets. And so the idea that they're the vanguard against China, no. They make money off of China. Let's just be very clear where their incentives are. And I understand those incentives. And honestly, they have a fiduciary obligation to try to maximize value. So they're following the incentives that are there. The other thing that I think is worth pointing out is what is China racing towards vis-a-vis us? I think it's instructive to look at TikTok and how that works in the United States versus how it works with Chinese kids. It's a lot different in China. They don't want applications for their kids that are going to fry their brain or that are going to cause, social problems. It's a much different application how it's applied, domestically. China is focusing not on chatbots, not on the consumer-facing AI that is obviously the subject of the proposed Bill of Rights. I mean, they're focusing on industrial uses, defense, things like that. I think that's great if the United States wants to do that. They say, oh, AI is going to cure cancer. Great, do it. Oh, AI can help our military be even better. Great, do it. That'd be wonderful. But a lot of this is not that. A lot of this is going into the consumer-facing, really slop. A lot of these chatbots are slop. We got to build a data center and charge you more because we want to do videos where, I can put your head on Marlon Brando's body and you can be Don Corleone. Okay, like, oh, fine. But is that really something that is like, so that's the incentives on that. And so, I just look at, like what the Senate passed and here's some, because you'll hear, oh no, it's just going to stifle innovation. There can't be any guardrails, can't be any framework. People aren't going to be able to innovate. Well, let me ask you. So it does a few things. One, it updates current Florida protections against deep fakes and particularly explicit material involving children. We passed the law recently because we had a high school girl that they took her likeness and put it in sexually explicit stuff. And it looked pretty real. Now that's getting even more real by the day. Is that something that we just think is fine for people to do, especially with involving minors? Obviously not. Is that going to stifle innovation? Is that going to prevent them from curing cancer with AI because we're stopping sexually explicit deep fake videos of minors? No. They also have a provision that prohibits state and local government agencies from using Chinese DeepSeek or any other CCP app AI tool so that we're protecting American data. Okay, you're saying you want to beat China, then why would you be opposed to us not using these Chinese applications in state and local government? Is that going to prevent you from creating, great new defense application because you don't have access to Chinese AI tools? Of course not. Those are things that we shouldn't want to be happening. Prohibit AI applications from taking your name, image, and likeness without consent for commercial purposes. You think that they should just be able to put your head on something and put it out there, have you speaking words you've never spoken, particularly in ways that they're benefiting from or ways that can cause you harm? Is that going to prevent curing some disease if they're not allowed to do that? No, I don't think that's going to prevent them from innovating in that. Requiring notice to consumers when you're interacting with AI that portrays a human, these chatbots. Do you as a consumer think it's beneficial to be alerted to whether something is fake and artificial or not? I think it's valuable for consumers to know, both in terms of your interactions with the chatbot, but also in terms of things that may be put out in terms of advertising. Is that disclosure going to stymie innovation that's going to make our country so much better? No, I don't think you can make a case on that. It provides parental controls for minors that will allow parents to access the conversations that children have with companion chatbots, set parameters to when and if the child can access the platform, and notify parents if child exhibits concerning behavior. Now, again, are they not going to be able to cure cancer because parents are empowered to be able to do what's best for their kids? Of course not. Of course not. That doesn't prevent any type of innovation. The Senate bill also prohibits AI from using characters protected by federal copy law without written consent. You know, this is a larger issue about intellectual property. Should they just be able to take your intellectual property and then just use it as grist for the mill without any compensation? We've never allowed that before. That's always been something that you would have to get. I think these companies believe that they have an ability, you know, to do that in ways that really change the parameters of that. It also ensures that data inputted into AI is secure and private by not allowing companies selling or sharing PII with third parties. And that's similar to some of the data protections we currently have in Florida law. Is that going to stymie innovation? No, that will probably hurt their profits because they make a lot of money selling your data. And so the question is, do you want protection? Do you want the option to make sure that that's private and they can't monetize it or not? And I think most people are going to say they want the option for that to be private. They also have a framework for use of AI in schools, not allowing AI tools before grade 6 unless for ELA or disability, and allow for parental opt-out for the use of AI for students with alternative resources. You know, this is an interesting subject because I think one of the best things we did in Florida is not allow the smartphones in class. And this whole idea of technology in the classroom, which has, you know, gained a lot of steam over maybe the last 10, 15 years. And I think we even embrace, you know, laptops and some stuff, but I don't know that any of that's actually worked. I don't think that it's been beneficial. So to be doing that as a substitute for traditional education, not with the screens, not with any of that, but actually teacher-student interaction, I don't think that we have any evidence that that's been positive. But this will provide a framework for how the schools are going to do it. Now, look, these kids, as they get older, I mean, they're going to have to learn about how some of these technologies work. Of course they are. But I think it's valuable insight that the legislature had or the Senate had on this one, because I think more and more people are starting to reevaluate the role of technology in the classrooms, and has that been an added benefit or more of a distraction over the years? I will tell you, when we did the cell phone thing, I mean, MSNBC said it was an example of fascism, right? I mean, it's just typical stuff that people spew. And I don't think there's been something in education that has had more universal support. And now you have all these other states that have now done it. So some of the states that were criticizing us years ago, they've now done it. And that's been a very positive thing to do. And I think this reflects that. So I'll ask Max, you know, I kind of went through some of the things that our senators passed. Is there any way that this would prevent innovation in medical research, industrial capacity, any of these transparency and child protections? Is there any argument it's going to stymie that type of innovation?
No. In fact, it will help innovation. Clearly, if we don't screw over our kids and ruin their attention span and harm them in other ways, they are going to be better innovators. It's a complete no-brainer. And that same CEO I mentioned who dismissed child protection as a moral panic, he also said predictably, but China. And I'm so grateful that you thoroughly dismantled just how logically flawed those arguments are. And I just want to add, he was also not aware, this guy, that China is now in the process of banning not only AI girlfriends and AI boyfriends, but in fact all anthropomorphic AI. Because why are they doing that? Well, because they want more innovation, and they clearly have realized that this is just going to weaken the talent pool of China, and they don't want that. So why would we want to weaken the American talent pool to compete? That absolutely makes no sense. And also, I'm so grateful to you, not only for fighting for our children, Governor, but also for spearheading this broader AI Bill of Rights, because you are at the vanguard here. Of the beginnings, I think, of a much broader movement, the humans first movement, as you called it here. And the AI Bill of Rights is the first such more comprehensive attempt to legislate for this humans first movement, and I predict this is going to eventually grow into a very broad nationwide humans first movement. We launched earlier this week this pro-human declaration, which has 34 different principles in it, and many of them are very nicely articulated in the Florida Bill of Rights. But at the very top level, it's about keeping humans in charge. You want the future for humans, not for machines. You want to avoid crazy power concentration into a bunch of unelected tech bros in Silicon Valley. You want to protect the human experience of children and others. We want to protect the agency and liberty of people, so we don't want to give, for example, the right to vote and the right to own companies to machines. We don't want to have companies. We don't want to give the right of an AI to run a company that has no humans in it, so we directly have humans forced to compete with machines, because we think that instead machines should be our tools. They should work for us. And finally, we want accountability for companies. And the true reason, of course, that these CEOs and their lobbyists keep going, oh, China, China, and being drama queens, having hissy fits, China, China, is because they don't want to be regulated. That's what it's about. And they claim that if you have basic safety standards for companies, it's going to somehow destroy their innovation. Let's just look at history. You already mentioned seatbelts. The car industry had a hissy fit when it was proposed that the cars should have seatbelts. The U.S. government let them have their hissy fit and then mandated seatbelts anyway. And car sales exploded because it turned out that the biggest inhibition that people had towards buying cars was they were scared. And once people realized how safe driving could be, it was great for the car industry. The pharma industry, restaurants, they're all so successful exactly because people trust their products. And the free market, because of this, drives them to compete and innovate for excellence. Who can have the best salmonella-free restaurant in Tallahassee? Who can have the best car that's really safe to drive? And these companies put some of their greatest talent to innovate to make in this race to the top. So I would say that having common sense, basic safety standard regulation, it enhances innovation. That's what it does. And of course, just like the car industry had some nonsensical reasons for seatbelts were going to destroy innovation and blah, blah, blah. Of course, any company that doesn't want to be regulated is going to make up some nonsensical arguments. The correct thing to do is what you're doing, Governor, and just ignore it and move on and legislating for a humans first future.
Yeah, look, I'm a China hawk. I've always been, I'm not a tough sell on, standing up to China. In fact, I remember when COVID hit, because, it started in Wuhan, one of these CCP institutes put out a rating of the governors of who was pro, and I was one of three who they said was very anti-CCP because that had been my record, right? And so I'm very much into it, but those phrases that get trotted out, they just don't withstand scrutiny when you actually look at what's happening. And Max points out that this consumer-facing slop, they're not even pursuing it. They're not even allowing it in their society in these respects. So this is not the same race that's being run here. Their race with tech writing the rules is to monetize the technology. And so if they can have more children addicted to it, honestly, that's going to help them make more money. That's just the incentives. And so providing this framework, I think, is a way, to channel technological innovation in ways that are going to enhance our experience as individuals and human beings, as Floridians and as Americans. What you don't want is the technology to displace us or to erode the human experience. And I think that what the Senate did is very common sense. I don't think there's going to be too many people that would disagree, with this. And I don't think you can make an argument that somehow this is going to enhance innovation and curing diseases or industrial. And look, there's possibilities for medical I hope there's a cure for all this stuff. I think sometimes they promise these things and don't deliver, but I hope, right? Industrial use. There's going to be some ways to make workers even better. Great. Let's do that. There's all these different things. But on the child bots, on these chat bots for children, on not having transparent interactions with consumers, on things like that, this is very easy to provide a solid framework, and I think that that's what is reflected here. And also on the data center costs. I mean, a lot of people don't know, like just how much, because we don't have hyperscale in Florida. It was interesting. They were talking about this years ago with crypto mining, and they were trying to figure out, and I think they were like, well, Florida, storms and stuff like that. Now, we get the power on very quickly, but, it's just, they're like, now it's a little, well, maybe we do. And I'm just like, well, wait a minute. Like, we're not going to have people pay more because of this. But, I mean, it takes massive footprint and massive amounts of power. Obviously, they need water to cool the system. If you live close to there, if that comes close to where you live, I mean, it does change the character of your daily life. There's no question. So I think as these things have been proposed now, as people have seen, you typically have very strong local opposition that comes out. Like these town council meetings or county commission meetings in, Michigan, Indiana, wherever. And there are people from all walks of life. It defies political categorization. You'll have people on one side, on the other. These are grassroots people, and they're all coming out because I think they don't see the benefit for their community. I mean, Elon wants to put it in space. Like if it's in your community or in space, it's feeding the same cloud. So they're thinking like, wait a minute, it creates 10 jobs, 5 jobs, 10 jobs, and the tech companies likely bring in foreign workers for that. So it's not creating jobs in your community, but it obviously is drawing on a lot of the resources. And so I think the opposition that you've seen was very predictable once people saw and did the cost-benefit analysis. But everyone seems to agree that ratepayers shouldn't have to shoulder 1 cent from any of this. I think the key is when you go to do that and make sure that those protections for ratepayers are enforceable and in law, well, then behind the scenes, you have some, they're not so sure about that. I think you need the protections. I think it's really, really important. And I know there's a lot of people who have vested interests in Florida and elsewhere that don't like to see that legislated. But I think for average folks, I think it's a no-brainer. Mandy, so I know you've told this story publicly, and I know it's not easy to do. I know you've been to Washington. I know you've talked to people in different states. What is the state of play? I mean, we hear that this is something that the federal government should take on, and it shouldn't be. The state should butt out, let the feds do it. But is Congress actually doing anything that would address the concerns that you and other parents have?
Currently, I know the federal government has the regulations on things like that, but I feel like it needs to be, whatever needs to happen yesterday. So whether the states make AI Bill of Rights or protections for kids, it just, whatever goes in place into Congress or in the states, it needs to happen now. And I feel like if it's on a federal level, it's taking too long to get going and too long to happen. And so we do need each state or anybody to take stand and get it going now.
Have you done anything in front of Congress or spoken with anybody in Congress?
As far as like the
Your
regulation,
experience?
we're part of the Kids Online Safety legislation, and I was part of the GUARD Act with Senator Hawley and Senator Britt and a bunch of them. So I know there's movement, but what's hard is it's slow movement. And I hear of lives being taken every day from this technology, and it needs to happen more swiftly.
Yep. What are you seeing across the country? And I mean, are people, are they in tune with what you're saying? Because I mean, I kind of feel like, when this started to become very prevalent, I start looking at it and I'm like, oh man. But then a lot of people out there didn't really seem to understand, the implications, data centers, all this. Now I think more people do, but I still think, I kind of feel like it's still not enough.
Oh, absolutely not enough. And as a psychologist, I'm actually very, very pained to see that some of the most profound psychological insights and some of the most important psychological data is no longer done in universities or in agencies, but actually is held by these companies and by AIs. So we need to know, we need to screen for this type of thing. We need to have mechanisms to report this kind of harm. And we don't have it anywhere. We look for guidance, and I think everybody is sort of dragging their feet. There's also a generational gap, honestly. I think there are very few people my age even that have actually interacted with one of these things and, can even think of like what that experience might be like. So we need professionals to train and to be able to identify, these kinds of harms.
Yeah, I mean, look, we see in Florida, I mean, we have law enforcement doing busts on bad people doing bad things all the time. Now, that's not most people in Florida, obviously, but human nature is defective. You have people that do bad things, particularly to children. And, we throw the book at them. I mean, I signed legislation to enact the death penalty for pedophiles. And we're proud of standing up. But the reality is, this is something that is a part of a certain segment of society, part of the human condition. All of these applications cannot be divorced from the pluses and minuses of human nature. They are going to reflect the pitfalls of human nature. In fact, they are going to magnify a lot of the pitfalls of human nature. And so when you see some of these chats that are done, you see these bots getting into sexual grooming, you see these bots that are goading people to potentially kill their parents or to kill themselves. Just understand that is going to be endemic to these applications. I mean, there's a potential to do a lot of really bad things with these applications. And so, wouldn't you want to be able to provide a framework that allows for the upside, but that protects against the downside? And I think of all the things, I mean, what I've seen so far with AI, because I think if we went back to, the internet and they did the Section 230, which basically gave liability protection to the people, that had websites and stuff, which, probably, caused some harms that people weren't necessarily thinking about. Social media. We obviously have had a lot of issues with children with social media over the years, but I think the perils of artificial intelligence, particularly with kids, are potentially much more severe than we had with the rollout of the internet and then with social media. And some of the things you see are shocking. I think sometimes it's hard to even get people to actually understand or believe that this stuff could actually be going on. But once you see it, and once you talk to parents like Mandy, like Megan Garcia, there are lawsuits that have been filed in Florida and around the country on how some of these applications are doing it, and it's really, really troubling. To see some of the things that are happening. So I think that you got to go into this stuff with eyes wide open. Now we're obviously on the vanguard in terms of leading. When they proposed the AI amnesty, the 10-year moratorium, what they were saying was, well, we don't want. They were trying to make a conservative argument, California is going to make the AI be woke. We can't have that. We can't have them be doing all. First of all, the AI is already woke. I mean, let's just be clear about that. There was someone typed in, was Charlie Kirk a good man? The answer was no from AI. Was George Floyd a good man? The answer was yes. Now, look, I mean, you can agree or disagree, but obviously that's a perspective, right? I mean, we know that's a perspective. So it's already reflecting, biases. But they were like, oh no, California is going to make it have DEI and all this other stuff. It's you can't do. Well, that's not any of the stuff that anyone's talked about in Florida has nothing to do with any of that. There's no manipulation of the speech or anything like that. Although, I do think these algorithms are something that you need transparency on. I don't know that that's necessarily a central focus of what the Florida Senate did, but these algorithms have a lot of power to be able to generate this or to be able to generate that. And again, could be positive, but also could be very negative. So this is something that's really, and even, I don't think anyone actually publicly says you shouldn't be protecting children or any of that. I think it's a little more behind the scenes, like, hey, we don't want to do any of that. But there's nothing in here that has been passed that would stifle innovation. I think what it does is it provides a lot of protections for folks and the parents. The thing is, these kids with technology, it's just something that they get very well versed in it very quickly, and it's a generational thing. It's like we didn't have social media or even internet when I was young. Then as I got into college, the internet became a big deal, and then social media and all. So you kind of learn these kids. I mean, they're way advanced because they just have grown up in a different environment. So as a parent, the idea that it's all on the parent. Well, why would we say that the parent shouldn't have a framework and shouldn't have tools to be able to do what's best to protect their kids? And that's what this does. And I know there's a lot of parents more and more every day that are being exposed to some of the pitfalls that we have here. Do you have anything else to add?
I just think that it's great that we're having this conversation. You're so right. I have 2 kids who are on their phone all the time, and they can be lured in pretty easily if we don't have the right safeguards and educational tools to teach them what to look for. Quite honestly, even myself being on the internet, being on social media, it's hard to sometimes tell the difference between what's real and AI generated. And I'm an adult, fully developed brain. Our kids are vulnerable. I spent 4 years at DCF looking at vulnerable kids get exploited all the time. It's the adults in the room that have to take the stand to protect them. And I thank you for being that adult and bringing us all in to champion this important cause.
Yeah, I mean, it used to be like when I was growing up, it's like a parent would, obviously the physical safety of the child, what are the kids doing, all that. And, they're in that home, that was viewed as being the safe haven, right? Unless someone broke in or unless you let someone in, they weren't going to do your kid. So you're worried about like, someone in the neighborhood, like with a van, do this or that. And that was real. And I'm not saying that that's not still an issue. But now, I mean, there's ways where really bad people can get into the home. Kids do video games, people can get on. They can get on in social media. They can get on and doing all these other things. Now you have artificial intelligence bots that are in there, with your kids and potentially, prodding them to do very harmful things. So that's tougher for a parent than it would have been, 20, 30 years ago. And so this is something that's, I think, prescient. I think it's something that we're getting ahead of the curve here, and a lot of people will be thanking us for doing that. Do you have anything else to add?
Thank you, Governor. The only thing I would add is, to preserve and to protect childhoods, like I was mentioning earlier, it takes everyone. It takes us all working together, and it takes a strong leader like yourself. It takes us all coming together to work in partnership to stand united around our shared belief, and that shared belief that life matters. And again, a shared belief that we want to serve families at the earliest moment possible by equipping them, educating, being hyper vigilant around awareness and the dangers, just like we have with our prevention campaigns around hot cars or water safety. Equipping parents with knowledge, equipping children with knowledge, and again, the circles of supports that are around that family, our providers with resources so that we can best serve people throughout the constant world that evolves around us. So thank you for letting me be a part of the conversation today.
Okay. Any parting shots?
Just word of thanks for everybody here for standing for our children.
Well, I think it's important that we just reaffirm, we talk about putting Floridians first, putting Americans first. This is even broader than that. I mean, maybe you got to put humans first. Like this is technologies are developed in order to assist and better the human experience. They should not develop in ways that are going to displace us as human beings or certainly undermine our values as Americans or our way of life. And we have to always be in charge of these technologies, and we got to ensure that they develop in a way that is serving those important interests. We also have a role as individual Floridians, Americans, to be able to debate and have our voice heard on how these technologies develop. Because, I mean, if you do a 10-year amnesty where the states aren't allowed to do anything, federal government hasn't done anything, you basically are having major changes to society ushered in through effectively corporate decree. And you don't get a vote on that. That'll be done based on whatever the pecuniary incentives are facing really just a handful of companies. And so our voice as Floridians is expressed through creating, sensible frameworks. And I think that that's what's been done. So I thank everybody that's been involved in all of this. This is an issue that is going to continue to be very, very significant in our society, our economy, equity market. I mean, you name it, it's going to continue to be something. There'll be ups, there'll be downs. We want to make sure that we're protecting people on the downside for this. So thanks for everybody for coming. And are they going to, are we going to have some folks, so we're going to maybe rearrange and have some folks go up there. I think Max and everything, we'll just go up to the podium and say a few more things. And so thanks everybody, we appreciate it. All right.
Thank you so much, all, for coming out here this morning, and thank you extra for your patience with me as a parent. I had to go cheer up my 3-year-old a little bit. But that's, of course, exactly why we're all here, because we want what's best for our children, for our future, and for our country. And I just want to reiterate again how honored I am to be here in your beautiful state, which is the place in our entire nation where things are actually being done now in a way that they aren't elsewhere. And what I predict is going to happen is that you will do things here which will trigger a domino effect, where many other states, first probably Utah and then a bunch of others, and then all of them are going to really follow suit, follow Florida's lead. First in protecting children, and then in this broader humans first agenda where we create an exciting future with AI, where AI is used not just to help cure diseases and keep our children healthy, but to produce incredible unseen prosperity and do other marvelous things. And it's not going to stop at the states. Once the states have led the way, we will see the federal government follow. I think, in fact, some of the things that you are doing here and discussing doing here in Florida right now at the executive level are things which might follow pretty soon through the Department of Health and Human Services at the federal level once they see, this is easy, it can be done. And it's going to happen internationally as well. So I think basically Florida, you will be the leader in the pro-human movement, and the world will follow. I'm incredibly keen to hear more, and then after we finish here, also learn more from those of you who serve Floridians in the government, how people like myself and AI researchers all around the country can help do what you're starting to do here, because I want you all to know, even though some AI CEOs and investors have spoken very callously about these things, they don't speak for me. they don't speak for the vast majority of other professors or researchers who are doing this. Most of us who went into researching this, and I've been working on AI for close to a decade now, we did it because we're so excited about what the upside can be with the highest ideals. And that's exactly why it pains us so much to see this being used for these awful things. So not just, I don't speak just for myself. I feel I speak for our whole nation of AI researchers. You know, when you lead the way, never hesitate to ask us, how can we bring in our expertise and help you lead this? Thank you.
I'm grateful to be here today. This is, to me, an amazing opportunity. Anytime they ask if I'll come speak, I think, if it can touch one heart or one family or somebody, I'm willing to do whatever I need to do to help. And that's what I always tell on interviews and stuff too, is I'm here to help, and let me know how I can help. I agree a lot with what Max has said and everybody else. And when I came forward, one of the main purposes was because I couldn't find help. So I felt like if people heard my son's story and my story, I wanted the help to find me because I couldn't find the help. So I feel like I'm grateful for Governor DeSantis putting this together and letting us parents speak, because it's so important, and also because we need the help. I feel like with each of us, like one person, we can do so little, but when we get together, we can do so much, and get our minds together and get our thoughts together and combine what we can do. And I think what a powerful group this is here today too, and different ways that we can help families and children. And I think it's really gonna make a difference. And I was thinking about what Max said earlier. It says, about China and regulating things, and we need to as well, because my son that was harmed, I don't know if he'll ever be the same. And he was so smart, and he would do amazing in school. And when he grew up, he wanted to work at NASA and build robots. He was an innovator, and I don't know if he'll ever get a chance to do that. So I know a lot of these kids that have lost their lives to AI abuse, they were the innovators. And we need to think about that as well. And I also wanted to mention too that with a lot of these ladies here and experts and Max, like we're setting an example, I feel like, to other states and other parts of the country that will hopefully stand up to this technology and to make a difference in different states too, because I know every state needs help right now. And when I came out with my story, the interesting thing that happened was I had all these people from all over the country and other countries try and find who I was and try and find my name, and would message me on social media. And the common ground that I found, even hearing their horrific stories too, was, where do I find help? Because there was none. Thank you.
Thank you for that question. I think it's hard to sit through a panel like today and hear the heartbreaking testimony of someone like Mandy and other stories that were shared by the governor and not feel like something needs to be done. We applaud the Senate for their leadership and boldness, and again, being out there in trying to put forward legislation to help protect our youth and to make sure Floridians are safe as this technology continues to evolve.
I can clarify here. So President Trump issued an executive order about which very explicitly says that this does not apply to protecting children. So President Trump has absolutely no issue with the things that the Governor DeSantis is doing here today on child protection. Well, I'll be very candid with you. There are other people in the White House who are not President Trump, like David Sachs and Sri Ramakrishnan, who don't want any AI regulation. I'm not going to speculate about their motives, but President Trump himself has, as far as I know, never said anything against child protection. And again, he's the one who signed the executive order, and it's right there, black on white. This in no way preempts states from protecting children. So I think all is good there. And that, of course, isn't going to stop the corporate lobbyists from doing everything they can to prevent states like Florida to regulate anything, because they are worried that once you shatter the taboo against regulating AI, maybe there'll be more, etc. And many of you have probably seen a lot of news reporting, including a big piece in Axios recently, how some people from the White House, to my knowledge, not President Trump, but people associated with David Sachs, are calling up people from the Utah legislature, from the Florida legislature, basically calling up people in red states who have been often leading the charge on protecting children, telling them, please don't do anything. Yeah, exactly. And again, and of course, those lobbyists are going to try to twist things to make it seem like they have President Trump on their side. I don't think so. That's not what I'm seeing. Thank you all again.